My name is Abigail, and I am 34 years old. Standing at the gate of my oceanfront mansion, I felt a strange mixture of emotions wash over me as I stared at the two people I never thought I would see again. My brother Roman and his wife Lucy stood there, luggage at their feet, desperation in their eyes as they begged to move in with me. 10 years ago, Roman punched me in the face and cut me off completely because Lucy called me trash, and I dared to confront them about it. Before I tell you what decision I made that day, let me know where you are watching from and hit subscribe if you have also had to deal with toxic family members. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Boston with my parents and older brother Roman. Our house was modest but comfortable, a two-story colonial with a small backyard where Roman and I would spend hours playing together when we were young. He was 4 years older than me, and in those early years, he was my protector and best friend. I remember him teaching me how to ride a bike, holding the back of the seat and running alongside me until I found my balance. When neighborhood kids would tease me about my curly hair, Roman would step in and tell them to back off. Our parents both worked in finance, my father as an investment advisor and my mother as an accountant. They worked long hours, which meant Roman and I spent a lot of time together after school. We would walk home together, Roman always making sure I crossed the streets safely, and then we would do our homework at the kitchen table before making sandwiches and watching cartoons. Everything changed when Roman turned 12. Our parents suddenly began placing enormous expectations on him. They enrolled him in every advanced class available, signed him up for multiple extracurricular activities, and constantly talked about how he would follow in their footsteps in the financial world. It was as if overnight the focus of our entire family shifted to Roman and his future. I was only 8 at the time, and I noticed the change immediately. Family dinners became interrogation sessions about Roman's grades and achievements. My accomplishments, like winning the spelling bee or getting the lead in the school play, were mentioned briefly before the conversation returned to Roman. I still remember the sting of disappointment when no one came to see me in the school production of Alice in Wonderland because it conflicted with one of Roman's debate tournaments. As the years passed, I worked harder and harder to gain my parents' approval. I maintained a perfect GPA, joined the student council, and volunteered at the local hospital. But no matter what I did, it never seemed to measure up to Roman's achievements in my parents' eyes. When I brought home straight A's, my mother would nod and say, "That's good, Abigail," before turning to Roman and gushing over his B+ in advanced calculus. The change in Roman was gradual but unmistakable. The kind, protective brother I had known began to morph into someone who absorbed our parents' attitudes. He became condescending, often making snide remarks about my interests or accomplishments. "Theater is just playing pretend, Abigail. It's not like what I'm doing will actually matter in the real world," he would say when I excitedly told him about landing a role in the school production. By the time I was in middle school and Roman was in high school, the divide between us had grown wide. He rarely had time for me anymore, too busy with his prestigious internships and college prep courses. When he did acknowledge me, it was often to criticize or tease me in front of his friends. I remember one particularly painful incident when I was 13 and had invited my first crush over to study. Roman waltzed into the living room and started telling embarrassing stories about me as a child, laughing as my face turned red with humiliation. Despite all this, I still clung to the belief that somewhere deep down, Roman still cared about me. I would notice glimpses of my old brother occasionally, like when he quietly helped me with my trigonometry homework without our parents knowing, or when he defended me to a particularly nasty teacher who had unfairly accused me of cheating on a test. I tried to maintain our connection, leaving notes of encouragement in his backpack before big tests, or saving him the last piece of chocolate cake because I knew it was his favorite. Sometimes these gestures would be met with a rare smile or a quick ruffle of my hair, moments I treasured because they reminded me of how things used to be. When Roman left for college at 18, our house felt both emptier and somehow less tense. Without him there to compare me to constantly, my parents occasionally noticed my achievements. My mother actually attended my debate tournament when I made it to the finals, and my father helped me with my college applications. But their conversation still revolved around Roman, his classes at Princeton, his internship prospects, the important connections he was making. I threw myself into my studies and extracurricular activities with renewed determination. If I could not have my parents' unconditional love and approval, I would at least make something of myself on my own terms. By my senior year, I had risen to valedictorian, earned a full scholarship to Northwestern University, and been accepted into their prestigious business program. The day I received my scholarship letter, I ran home, bursting with excitement. I had achieved something significant entirely on my own merit, something that would relieve my parents of any financial burden for my education. I found my parents in the kitchen and eagerly shared my news. "That's wonderful, Abigail," my father said, looking up briefly from his newspaper. "Northwestern has a good program," my mother added, stirring her coffee. "Not quite Princeton, of course, but very respectable." Their lukewarm response stung, but I had expected it. What I hadn't expected was the phone call that came 15 minutes later. It was Roman, and my parents immediately put him on speakerphone. He had just been offered a summer associate position at Goldman Sachs, a position typically reserved for MBA students. My parents erupted in cheers and congratulations, my scholarship completely forgotten in the excitement over Roman's achievement. I sat there at the kitchen table, scholarship letter still in my hand, feeling invisible in my own home. That was the moment I realized that no matter what I accomplished, it would never be enough to put me on equal footing with Roman and my family. And that realization, painful as it was, ultimately gave me the freedom to stop seeking their approval and start building my own path forward. As I packed for college that fall, I made a quiet promise to myself that I would create a life that was meaningful on my own terms, with or without my family's recognition. Little did I know then how completely that promise would be tested in the years to come. Arriving at Northwestern University felt like stepping into a new world. For the first time in my life, I was surrounded by people who did not know me as Roman's little sister, but simply as Abigail. My dormitory was a 5-story brick building with large windows that overlooked Lake Michigan. I had a roommate named Jessica from Seattle who studied marine biology and introduced me to spicy food and indie rock bands. During orientation week, I attended a tech startup showcase that changed the trajectory of my life. Watching young entrepreneurs passionately pitch their ideas to a panel of investors ignited something within me. I had always been interested in business, but seeing these innovators, many not much older than myself, made me realize I did not have to wait until after graduation to pursue my own ventures. I declared a dual major in business and computer science, which raised a few eyebrows from my academic advisor. "That's an ambitious combination," she warned. "The workload will be intense." But I was determined. Years of trying to prove myself to my family had made me resilient and disciplined when it came to academic challenges. College life was busy but exhilarating. I joined the Entrepreneurship Club and the Women in Business Association, where I met like-minded students who shared my passion for innovation. During my sophomore year, I began developing an idea for a mobile application that would help small businesses manage their inventory and connect with local suppliers. I spent countless nights in the campus computer lab teaching myself additional programming languages and working on prototypes. My relationship with my family grew increasingly distant during this time. I would call home every Sunday, but the conversations were brief and superficial. My parents were preoccupied with Roman's progress at his new job at the financial firm where they had helped him secure a position. When I mentioned my app idea during one call, my father chuckled and said, "Apps are a dime a dozen these days, Abigail. Focus on getting good internships with your brother." Financial independence became my priority. The scholarship covered my tuition, but living expenses in Chicago were steep. I worked 20 hours a week at the campus bookstore and took on freelance web design projects for local businesses. Every dollar I earned went toward building my business or paying for essentials. I lived frugally, often skipping social events to save money or work on my app. During my sophomore year, I met Professor Lawrence Bennett during a business pitch competition, a former tech executive who had sold his company for millions before turning to academia. Lawrence saw potential in my idea and offered to mentor me. Under his guidance, I refined my business plan and learned about securing funding. "You've got something special here, Abigail," Lawrence told me after reviewing my latest prototype. "But you need to think bigger. This could help not just local businesses, but create a network across regions." With Lawrence's encouragement, I applied to the university's startup incubator program and was accepted. This gave me access to workspace, resources, and introductions to potential investors. I assembled a small team of fellow students who believed in my vision. Emma, a brilliant programmer, David, a marketing major with creative ideas, and Michael, who understood supply chain logistics. The summer before my senior year, we launched a beta version of the app called Supply Link with 20 local businesses in Chicago. The feedback was promising, but we quickly discovered flaws in our model. Several businesses dropped out, citing issues with the user interface and integration problems with their existing systems. It was my first real taste of failure, and it hit hard. I remember calling Lawrence in tears from my tiny apartment, ready to give up. "This is part of the process," he assured me. "Every successful entrepreneur faces setbacks. What matters is how you respond to them." Taking his advice to heart, I gathered my team for an honest assessment of what went wrong. We spent the next 2 months completely rebuilding the platform, addressing each issue raised by our beta testers. I used every cent of my savings to keep us afloat during this period, often skipping meals to stretch my budget further. When I did go home for Christmas that year, the contrast between Roman's life and mine could not have been more stark. He had just been promoted at his firm and had purchased a luxury condo in Boston's exclusive Back Bay neighborhood. Meanwhile, I was wearing thrift store clothes and had lost weight from my irregular eating habits. "You look tired, Abigail," my mother commented during Christmas dinner. "Perhaps you should reconsider this app business. There's an entry-level position at your father's company that might suit you after graduation." "I'm fine, Mom," I replied, trying to hide my frustration. "Supply Link is going through some growing pains, but we're making progress." Roman smirked from across the table. "Supply Link sounds like a dating site for warehouse workers." Our parents laughed, and I felt that familiar sting of being the family joke. But something had changed in me. Instead of shrinking from their dismissal, I found myself calmly describing our new business model and the potential market we were targeting. They might not understand or approve, but I no longer needed them to. After graduation, while most of my classmates were interviewing for corporate positions, I decided to go all in on Supply Link. We relaunched with our improved platform and began to see steady growth. Lawrence introduced me to a few angel investors who provided enough funding to move into a small office space and hire 2 additional developers. The first year was grueling. I worked 16-hour days, 7 days a week. There were moments when I questioned my decision, especially when I would see social media updates from Roman, traveling to exotic locations for business meetings or moving into an even larger home, all with the continued financial and emotional support of our parents. But slowly, Supply Link began to gain traction. Small businesses in Chicago started recommending us to their counterparts in neighboring cities. By the 18th month mark, we had over 300 businesses using our platform and had expanded to 3 states. We were not profitable yet, but we were growing steadily. I still made obligatory appearances at family gatherings, though these became increasingly uncomfortable. My parents would introduce me to their friends as our daughter who has a little internet business, while Roman was presented as our son, the vice president at Morgan Stanley. I learned to smile through these interactions, knowing that external validation from my family was something I might never receive. What I did not realize was that while one chapter of family disappointment was closing, another more painful one was about to begin. One that would test not just my business resolve, but my personal boundaries in ways I could never have anticipated. I first met Lucy during a Thanksgiving dinner at my parents' house when I was 26. Roman had mentioned he was bringing someone special, and my parents were practically vibrating with excitement. They had redecorated the guest room, bought new china for the occasion, and my mother had even hired a professional cleaner for the first time in years. When they arrived, I immediately understood the fuss. Lucy was stunning, with glossy dark hair, perfect makeup, and the kind of confidence that comes from a lifetime of being told you are special. She wore designer clothes that even I could recognize, despite my limited interest in fashion. Roman looked at her like she hung the moon, and my parents were equally entranced. "Abigail, this is Lucy Hartley," Roman said, emphasizing her last name as if I should recognize it. I later learned she was the daughter of Richard Hartley, owner of one of the largest private equity firms on the East Coast. "It's so lovely to meet you," Lucy said, air kissing both my cheeks. "Roman has told me so much about his little sister and her cute little app business." There was something about the way she said cute little app business that made my skin crawl, but I smiled politely. "SupplyLink is doing well, actually. We just expanded into the Midwest market." "How charming," she replied, already turning her attention to my mother's renovated kitchen. Throughout dinner, Lucy dominated the conversation with stories about her recent trip to Paris, her father's new yacht, and the charity gala she had helped organize that had raised just over $1 million. My parents hung on her every word, asking follow-up questions and complimenting everything from her charity work to her choice of wine. When I attempted to share news about a major client we had just signed, my mother cut me off mid-sentence to ask Lucy about her diamond bracelet. It was as if I had become even more invisible in my family's eyes now that Roman had brought home someone who represented everything they valued: wealth, social status, and connections. After dinner, I helped clear the dishes while Roman, Lucy, and my parents moved to the living room for coffee. As I loaded the dishwasher, I overheard Lucy say, "The tech sector is so volatile these days. I worry about people who put all their eggs in that basket." There was a pause. Then she added more quietly, "Especially when they don't have the proper education or background for it." I felt my cheeks burn with anger and embarrassment, knowing they were talking about me. But I took a deep breath and reminded myself that my worth was not determined by Lucy's opinions or my family's approval. Over the next few months, Roman and Lucy became increasingly serious. They were featured in Boston Magazine's Power Couples Under 30 spread, and my parents could not stop talking about what an amazing match they were. During one phone call, my mother not so subtly suggested that I might want to let Roman introduce you to some of his colleagues since you're not getting any younger. "I'm focused on growing my company right now, Mom. Dating is not a priority." "Well, not everyone can marry someone like Lucy," she sighed. "But you could at least try to meet someone suitable." Despite these tensions, I made an effort to maintain a relationship with Roman. We would occasionally meet for lunch when I was in Boston, though these meetings increasingly included Lucy. She would be pleasant to my face, asking surface-level questions about my business before steering the conversation back to her world. 6 months after they started dating, Roman proposed to Lucy with a 5-carat diamond ring during a hot air balloon ride over Napa Valley. The engagement was announced in the Boston Globe Society pages, and my parents immediately began planning what promised to be the wedding of the season.
I was invited to the engagement party at the Hartley Estate, a sprawling mansion in Brookline with manicured gardens and a view of the Boston skyline. Feeling out of place among the wealthy guests, I found a quiet corner in the library to catch my breath. That was when I overheard Roman and Lucy talking in the adjacent room. "Your sister seems nice enough," Lucy was saying, her voice dripping with insincerity. "But honestly, Roman, she's a bit of an embarrassment. Everyone here is someone important, and she's running some failing startup out of a converted warehouse." I froze, unable to move as I waited for Roman to defend me. Instead, I heard him sigh. "I know, babe. She's always been the family disappointment. My parents tried their best with her, but she just doesn't have what it takes to succeed in the real world." "She's basically trash compared to the people we associate with," Lucy continued. "I mean, look at her outfit tonight. It's like she doesn't even try." "Let's just keep her involvement in the wedding to a minimum," Roman replied. "Maybe we can see her at the back with the distant cousins." I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. All these years, I had held onto the belief that deep down, Roman still cared about me, that despite his condescension and our parents' favoritism, he was still the brother who had taught me to ride a bike and defended me from bullies. In that moment, that last shred of illusion was shattered. I slipped out of the library and rejoined the party, my face a careful mask hiding the pain underneath. For the remainder of the evening, I smiled and made small talk, counting the minutes until I could leave. When Lucy clinked her glass to announce that they had set a date for the following spring, I joined in the applause despite feeling hollow inside. On the flight back to Chicago the next day, I made a decision. I would attend their wedding because that was what was expected of me, but I would maintain stronger boundaries with my family going forward. Their approval was something I would never have, and continuing to seek it was only causing me pain. What I did not know then was that the worst was yet to come, and that the wedding itself would become the breaking point that would ultimately sever my relationship with my family for good. 6 months after the engagement party, wedding preparations were in full swing. Despite being Roman's only sister, I was not asked to be a bridesmaid. Lucy had selected 5 of her sorority sisters and her 2 cousins instead. "It's nothing personal," Roman explained over the phone. "Lucy has her vision for the wedding party, and we need to respect that." I told myself it did not matter. I was busy with Supply Link anyway, which had recently secured another round of funding. We were now operating in 6 states and had a team of 15 employees. The company was finally turning a small profit, which I was reinvesting into expansion efforts. 3 months before the wedding, I received a strange call from my mother. "Abigail, we need to discuss the wedding expenses," she said without preamble. "What about them?" I asked, confused. I had already bought my dress and booked my flights. "Well, as you know, the Hartleys are contributing significantly, but there are many costs that fall to us as the groom's family. My father and I have tapped into our retirement savings, but we're still coming up short." A sense of foreboding washed over me. "Mom, what are you saying?" "We need your help, Abigail. We used your credit card for some of the deposits. We know your business is doing well now, and this is an important family occasion." I nearly dropped my phone. "You did what? How did you even get my credit card information?" "You left your wallet at the house during your last visit. It's not a big deal. We're family, and this is your brother's wedding." I logged into my account immediately and felt sick to my stomach. There were charges totaling just over $100,000, all to various wedding vendors, a luxury hotel venue, a renowned caterer, a designer florist, and numerous others. I logged into my account immediately and felt sick to my stomach. There were charges totaling just over $100,000, all to various wedding vendors, a luxury hotel venue, a renowned caterer, a designer florist, and numerous others. Mom, this is insane. You can't just take my credit card without permission and charge $100,000. Don't be so dramatic, Abigail, she replied coldly. Roman would do the same for you. This is what family does. Besides, it's not like you can't afford it now that your little app is making money. I was speechless with rage and disbelief. Not only had they stolen from me, but they were acting as if I was obliged to accept it. I want you to refund every charge immediately, I said when I could finally speak. This is not a request. It's theft, and it's illegal. I can't believe how selfish you're being, my mother exclaimed. After everything we've done for you, this is your brother's special day.
The conversation devolved from there, with my mother eventually hanging up on me after calling me an ungrateful daughter. My father called back an hour later, his tone more reasonable, but his message the same. I needed to step up and cover these expenses as part of my family duty. I contacted my credit card company immediately to dispute the charges. But because my parents had physical access to my card and there was a family relationship, the process became complicated. I was advised to file a police report, something I was not yet ready to do, against my own parents. The week before the wedding, the families gathered in Boston for various pre-wedding events. Despite everything, I attended the rehearsal dinner at an upscale restaurant overlooking the harbor. I had decided to confront my parents and Roman in person after the wedding, hoping to resolve the credit card situation privately. The dinner was lavish, with 5 courses and premium wines. Lucy's father gave a toast praising Roman as the son I never had and expressing his joy at uniting their families. My parents beamed with pride, and I sat silently, feeling like an outsider at my own family event. After dinner, guests mingled in the restaurant's private bar area. I was speaking with one of Roman's college friends when Lucy approached, clearly having had several glasses of champagne. "Abigail, darling," she said loudly enough for nearby guests to hear, "I wanted to thank you for your generous contribution to our special day. Roman told me about your parents using your credit card. So sweet of you to help out." My face burned with humiliation as several people turned to look at us. "That wasn't exactly how it happened," I said quietly. Lucy's smile turned cold. "No? Because I heard you've been throwing a fit about it. Really, Abigail, it's unbecoming to be so stingy about your only brother's wedding." Something in me snapped. All the years of dismissal, of being the family disappointment, of trying and failing to earn their approval culminated in that moment. My parents stole my credit card and charged $100,000 without my permission. That's not being stingy. That's having normal boundaries. Lucy's eyes widened in mock concern. "Oh dear, is the little app business not doing as well as you pretend? Is money tight? We could have seated you at the children's table if we had known." "My business is doing fine," I replied, struggling to maintain my composure. "This is about respect and basic decency, concepts you clearly don't understand." "How dare you speak to my fiancé that way?" Roman's voice came from behind me. He had approached without my noticing and had clearly heard the tail end of our conversation. I turned to face him. "Roman, she's deliberately humiliating me in public, and you and our parents had no right to use my credit card without permission. We thought you would want to contribute, but apparently you're too selfish to help your own family." "This isn't about helping family," I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "This is about you all feeling entitled to take whatever you want from me while giving nothing in return." Nothing in return? Roman laughed bitterly. We gave you everything. A stable home, opportunities, connections. No, Roman, you got those things. I got to watch from the sidelines while being told I was never good enough. Several guests were openly watching now, and Lucy seemed to be enjoying the spectacle. I told you she was trash, she whispered to Roman. No class whatsoever, making a scene at our rehearsal dinner. That was when I made the mistake of revealing what I had overheard at the engagement party. I heard you both that night, in the library at your parents' house. I heard you call me trash in a disappointment. I heard Roman agree with you. Roman's face contorted with anger. You were spying on us. I wasn't spying. I was in the next room and you weren't exactly whispering. What happened next occurred so quickly, I barely had time to react. Roman's face flushed deep red. And before I knew what was happening, his fist connected with my cheek, sending me stumbling backward into a cocktail table. The room fell silent. I touched my face in shock, feeling the sting where his knuckles had made contact. A small trickle of blood ran from the corner of my mouth. Get out, Roman said, his voice low and dangerous. Get out and don't come back. You're not welcome at my wedding or in my life anymore. The conversation devolved from there, with my mother eventually hanging up on me after calling me an ungrateful daughter. My father called back an hour later, his tone more reasonable, but his message the same. I needed to step up and cover these expenses as part of my family duty. I contacted my credit card company immediately to dispute the charges. But because my parents had physical access to my card and there was a family relationship, the process became complicated. I was advised to file a police report, something I was not yet ready to do, against my own parents. The week before the wedding, the families gathered in Boston for various pre-wedding events. Despite everything, I attended the rehearsal dinner at an upscale restaurant overlooking the harbor. I had decided to confront my parents and Roman in person after the wedding, hoping to resolve the credit card situation privately. The dinner was lavish, with 5 courses and premium wines. Lucy's father gave a toast praising Roman as the son I never had and expressing his joy at uniting their families. My parents beamed with pride, and I sat silently, feeling like an outsider at my own family event. After dinner, guests mingled in the restaurant's private bar area. I was speaking with one of Roman's college friends when Lucy approached, clearly having had several glasses of champagne. Abigail, darling, she said loudly enough for nearby guests to hear, I wanted to thank you for your generous contribution to our special day. Roman told me about your parents using your credit card. So sweet of you to help out. My face burned with humiliation as several people turned to look at us. That wasn't exactly how it happened, I said quietly. Lucy's smile turned cold. No, because I heard you've been throwing a fit about it. Really, Abigail, it's unbecoming to be so stingy about your only brother's wedding. Something in me snapped. All the years of dismissal, of being the family disappointment, of trying and failing to earn their approval culminated in that moment. My parents stole my credit card and charged $100,000 without my permission. That's not being stingy. That's having normal boundaries. Lucy's eyes widened in mock concern. Oh dear, is the little app business not doing as well as you pretend? Is money tight? We could have seated you at the children's table if we had known. My business is doing fine, I replied, struggling to maintain my composure. This is about respect and basic decency, concepts you clearly don't understand. How dare you speak to my fiancé that way? Roman's voice came from behind me. He had approached without my noticing and had clearly heard the tail end of our conversation. I turned to face him. Roman, She's deliberately humiliating me in public, and you and our parents had no right to use my credit card without permission. We thought you would want to contribute, but apparently you're too selfish to help your own family. This isn't about helping family, I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. This is about you all feeling entitled to take whatever you want from me while giving nothing in return. Nothing in return? Roman laughed bitterly. We gave you everything, a stable home, opportunities, connections. No, Roman, you got those things. I got to watch from the sidelines while being told I was never good enough. Several guests were openly watching now, and Lucy seemed to be enjoying the spectacle. I told you she was trash, she whispered to Roman. No class whatsoever, making a scene at our rehearsal dinner. That was when I made the mistake of revealing what I had overheard at the engagement party. I heard you both that night, in the library at your parents' house. I heard you call me trash in a disappointment. I heard Roman agree with you. Roman's face contorted with anger. You were spying on us. I wasn't spying. I was in the next room and you weren't exactly whispering. What happened next occurred so quickly, I barely had time to react. Roman's face flushed deep red. And before I knew what was happening, his fist connected with my cheek, sending me stumbling backward into a cocktail table. The room fell silent. I touched my face in shock, feeling the sting where his knuckles had made contact. A small trickle of blood ran from the corner of my mouth. Get out, Roman said, his voice low and dangerous. Get out and don't come back. You're not welcome at my wedding or in my life anymore.
No one moved to help me or to condemn Roman's action. Not my parents, who stood frozen a few feet away. Not any of the guests who had witnessed the assault. Lucy looked almost satisfied, slipping her arm through Roman's as if to support him through this difficult moment. I gathered my purse and walked out of the restaurant, tears blurring my vision. Outside, I hailed a taxi and returned to my hotel, where I packed my belongings with shaking hands. I took the first flight back to Chicago the next morning. The wedding went ahead as planned 2 days later without me. My credit card company eventually resolved most of the disputed charges, though the process took months and damaged my credit score temporarily. I never received an apology from my parents or from Roman. In fact, I did not hear from any of them again for a very long time. That night changed everything. The physical assault was the final line crossed, but in truth, the relationship had been broken long before Roman's fist made contact with my face. As I flew home that morning, I made a promise to myself. I would build a life so full and rich that their absence would be nothing more than a footnote in my story. The first few months after the wedding incident were some of the darkest of my life. I threw myself into work to avoid processing the pain, often staying at the office until the early hours of the morning. My team noticed the change in me, the dark circles under my eyes, my shorter temper, but I deflected their concerns with talk of expansion goals and market opportunities. Lawrence was the only one I confided in. We met for coffee one rainy afternoon, and I finally broke down, telling him everything that had happened with my family. He listened without interruption, his expression growing increasingly troubled. Abigail, he said when I had finished, what they did was abusive, both financially and emotionally, and your brother physically assaulted you. Have you considered speaking with a therapist about this? I had not, but his suggestion made sense. The next day, I found a therapist specializing in family trauma, Dr. Sophia Martinez. Our weekly sessions became an anchor as I navigated the complex emotions of grief, anger, and liberation that came with cutting ties with my family. Family estrangement is more common than people realize, Dr. Martinez told me during one session. And sometimes it's the healthiest choice when the relationship is consistently harmful. Meanwhile, SupplyLink was growing beyond my initial vision. What had started as a tool for small businesses to manage inventory had evolved into a comprehensive platform that facilitated entire supply chains. We secured a major investment from a venture capital firm that allowed us to hire more developers and expand our marketing efforts. I relocated to a larger office in downtown Chicago and brought on a chief operating officer, Rachel Kim, who had experience scaling tech startups. With Rachel managing day-to-day operations, I could focus on strategic growth and product development. By the end of that year, we had users in 15 states and were beginning to attract attention from industry publications. One of those publications, Tech Innovator, was doing a feature on women founders in the supply chain technology space. They sent a journalist named Brian Walsh to interview me. Brian was thoughtful and asked insightful questions about the challenges I had overcome in building SupplyLink. What was scheduled as a 1-hour interview stretched to 3 and ended with Brian asking if I would be interested in continuing our conversation over dinner. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant in Lincoln Park. Brian was different from anyone I had dated before, genuinely interested in my thoughts and experiences without any underlying agenda. He was a technology journalist with a background in engineering, intelligent and compassionate, with a dry sense of humor that made me laugh for the first time in months. My family situation is complicated, I warned him on our third date, as in, I don't speak to any of them anymore. Family isn't just about blood, he replied. It's about who shows up for you, who respects your boundaries, who celebrates your successes without making them about themselves. Over the next year, Brian and I built a relationship based on mutual respect and genuine affection. He understood my dedication to my company and never made me feel guilty for working late or traveling for business. In turn, I supported his career when he was offered a position as technology editor at a major digital publication. With SupplyLink thriving and my personal life more stable, I began to think about creating a more permanent home for myself. Chicago had been good to me, but I was drawn to the idea of a fresh start somewhere new. During a business trip to California, I fell in love with the coastline south of San Francisco. There was something healing about the endless horizon of the Pacific Ocean, the rhythmic sound of waves against the shore. When a property came on the market in Half Moon Bay, a beautiful oceanfront home perched on a cliff with panoramic views, I knew immediately it was where I wanted to be. The house was expensive, over $4 million, but SupplyLink had made me wealthy beyond what I had ever imagined. I purchased it outright and hired an interior designer to create spaces that felt both luxurious and comfortable. Brian supported my decision to relocate, and we maintained our relationship long distance for several months before he was able to transfer to his publication's San Francisco office. We did not officially move in together, Brian keeping his own apartment in the city, but he spent most weekends with me in Half Moon Bay. In California, I built a new support network. I joined a business leaders forum and made friends with other tech entrepreneurs. I took up beach yoga and hiking, activities that helped me feel grounded and connected to my new home. Lawrence visited several times a year, proud of how far I had come from the nervous college student he had first mentored. Rachel continued to run the Chicago office brilliantly, while I established a smaller satellite office in San Francisco. SupplyLink expanded internationally with users in Canada, the UK, and Australia. We developed a mobile application that allowed business owners to manage their inventory from anywhere, which opened up entirely new markets. 4 years after the wedding incident, SupplyLink was valued at over $200 million. I was featured in Forbes' 40 Under 40 list and invited to speak at technology conferences around the world. The scared, hurt woman who had fled Boston in tears had transformed into a confident, successful entrepreneur with a life built entirely on her own terms. Occasionally, news of my family would reach me through mutual connections. Roman and Lucy had moved into a larger house in an exclusive Boston suburb. My parents had retired early, partially funded by investments Roman had guided them toward. They all still moved in the same social circles, attending charity galas and country club events, their lives unchanged except for my absence. I sometimes wondered if they ever thought about me, if they ever regretted their actions or missed my presence. But these wonderings became less frequent and less painful as time passed. I had created a family of choice. Brian, who loved me for exactly who I was. Lawrence, who had believed in me when no one else did. Rachel and my team at SupplyLink, who worked alongside me to build something meaningful. And the friends who showed up for birthdays and celebrations, who called to check in when I was traveling, who cared about my well-being without conditions. 6 years after leaving Boston, Brian proposed during a sunset walk on the beach below our house. We married in a small ceremony on that same beach, surrounded by only our closest friends. Lawrence walked me down the aisle, and Rachel was my maid of honor. There were no family complications, no drama, just a celebration of love and connection. The following year, we welcomed our daughter, Lily, named after Brian's grandmother. Holding her in my arms for the first time, I made a silent promise that she would always know her worth was not tied to achievement or comparison. She would be loved unconditionally, exactly as she was. Life settled into a beautiful rhythm. SupplyLink continued to thrive, though I had stepped back from the day-to-day operations to focus on strategic direction and spend more time with my family. Brian had published his first book on the future of technology and was working on a second. Our home by the ocean was filled with laughter, love, and the kind of peace I had never known growing up. And then 10 years after I had last seen any member of my family, my security system alerted me to visitors at the gate. On the monitor, I saw two people I never expected to see again, Roman and Lucy, looking very different from the last time I had seen them. It was a crisp Saturday morning in November. Brian had taken 4-year-old Lily to her swimming lesson, and I was enjoying a rare quiet moment on the terrace with a cup of coffee and the latest quarterly reports from SupplyLink. The view of the Pacific Ocean stretched before me, waves crashing against the rocks below. This peaceful scene was interrupted by the chime in the security system. I checked the monitor and felt my heart skip a beat. Standing at my gate, looking directly into the camera, were Roman and Lucy. I almost did not recognize them at first. Gone was Lucy's perfectly styled hair and designer clothing. Instead, she wore jeans and a plain sweater, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Roman, once impeccably groomed in custom suits, was in khakis and a wrinkled button-down shirt. They both looked tired, with dark circles under their eyes and strained expressions. For a moment, I considered ignoring them. I could pretend I was not home, wait for them to leave, and continue my life as if this interruption had never occurred. But curiosity mingled with a strange sense of inevitability. Perhaps this confrontation had been 10 years in the making. I set down my coffee and made my way to the front gate. As I approached, I saw their expressions shift from anxiety to relief at the sight of me. Behind them on the street was a modest sedan with luggage piled in the back seat, a far cry from the luxury vehicles they once drove. "Abigail," Roman said as I stopped a few feet from the gate, keeping the barrier between us. "You look well." "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice steadier than I expected. "How did you even find me?" Lucy stepped forward. "Your company was featured in Business Weekly last month. They mentioned you lived in Half Moon Bay. We asked around until we found your address."
That doesn't explain why you're here. It's been 10 years. 10 years since you hit me and told me to get out of my life. Roman had the decency to look ashamed. I know, and I have no right to be here, but we didn't know where else to go. What happened? I asked, though part of me already suspected the answer. Everything fell apart, he said, running a hand through his hair, which I now noticed was streaked with gray, despite him being only 44. The firm I was working for was involved in some questionable investments. When it all came to light, I lost my job. Then the market crashed and we lost most of our savings. We had to sell the house, Lucy added, her once haughty voice now subdued. And then the apartment after that. We've been staying with friends, but we've worn out our welcome everywhere. What about Mom and Dad? I asked. Roman looked down at the ground. They lost almost everything too. They had followed my investment advice, put everything into the same funds I was managing. They're living in a small condo in Florida now, barely getting by on what's left of their retirement. A heavy silence fell between us. I studied their faces, searching for any sign of the entitled, cruel people who had dismissed me for so many years. What I saw instead were two broken individuals, humbled by circumstances they had never prepared for. Abigail, we need a place to stay, just temporarily until we can get back on our feet. I have some job prospects, but nothing definite yet, and Lucy is trying to find work, but without a degree or experience. You want to move in with me? I stated flatly, the absurdity of the situation not lost on me after everything that had happened.
Lucy nodded, tears welling in her eyes. We wouldn't ask if we had any other option. We have literally nowhere else to go. Your parents did this to me, I reminded them. They stole from me to pay for your wedding. And you, I looked directly at Roman, you punched me in the face when I dared to stand up for myself. You called me trash, I turned to Lucy. Both of you did. And now you want my help. I know we don't deserve it, Roman said quietly. But we're family, Abigail. Despite everything. Family. Family, I repeated, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. You didn't consider me family when you were succeeding. I was the embarrassment, the disappointment, remember? I was trash compared to the people you associated with. They both flinched at my words, recognizing them as their own from years ago. I was wrong, Lucy said, her voice barely above a whisper. We both were. The way we treated you was inexcusable. Yes, it was, I agreed. And an apology 10 years later, only when you need something from me, doesn't exactly feel genuine. Roman stepped closer to the gate. I understand your anger, I do. But please, Abigail, we're desperate. We can help around the house, take care of maintenance, whatever you need. We'll stay out of your way. It would just be until we can save enough for a security deposit on an apartment. I looked at them, really looked at them, taking in the desperation in their eyes, the slump of their shoulders, the luggage in their car that contained all they had left in the world. And I thought about my life now, the success I had built, the family I had created, the peace I had found. For a brief moment, I considered what it would be like to have them living in my home. The tension at breakfast, the explanations to Lily about who these people were, the inevitable comparisons and judgments that would creep back into my life. And beyond that, the message it would send, that people could treat me terribly without consequences as long as they apologized when it became convenient for them. I realized then that I was at a crossroads. The decision I made in this moment would define not just my relationship with Roman and Lucy, but the example I set for my daughter about self-respect and boundaries. I need some time to think, I said finally. Wait here. I walked back toward the house, my mind racing with conflicting emotions. As I reached the terrace, I saw Brian's car pulling into the driveway, returning from Lily's swim lesson. I waited for them to join me,
watching as my daughter ran up the path, her wet hair dripping onto her pink swim cover-up, her face bright with excitement. "Mommy, I went underwater for 10 seconds today," she exclaimed, wrapping her arms around my legs. "That's amazing, sweetie," I said, smoothing her damp hair. "I'm so proud of you." Brian approached more slowly, his expression questioning as he noticed my distracted state. "Is everything okay?" I took a deep breath. "Roman and Lucy are at the gate. They want to move in with us." His eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Your brother, the one who hit you?" I nodded and briefly explained their situation while Lily played with her toys on the terrace. Brian listened without interrupting, his expression growing increasingly concerned. "What do you want to do? It's your decision, and I'll support whatever you choose. But remember what Dr. Martinez always said about boundaries." I thought about those therapy sessions, about the hard work I had done to heal from my family's treatment, about the life I had built, free from their judgment and conditional love.
I walked back to the gate where Roman and Lucy waited anxiously. I stood before them, feeling strangely calm. The ocean breeze ruffled my hair as I looked at these two people who had once held so much power over my emotional well-being. Now they stood before me, humbled by circumstance, seeking the very help they had once deemed beneath them to give. "I have thought about your request," I said, my voice steady and clear, "and I have decided that you cannot move in with us." Their faces fell, disappointment and fear washing over them. Roman opened his mouth to protest, but I held up my hand to stop him. "Please let me finish. I don't say this out of spite or revenge. I don't hate either of you anymore. That kind of anger is exhausting to carry, and I let it go years ago for my own peace." I took a deep breath before continuing. "But I cannot welcome you into my home. The relationship we had was deeply unhealthy. You both, along with our parents, consistently undermined me, belittled my achievements, and ultimately stole from me and physically assaulted me when I stood up for myself." "We know we were wrong," Lucy said, tears streaming down her face. "We've changed, Abigail. Life has humbled us." "Perhaps you have changed," I acknowledged, "and I hope that's true. But an apology offered only when you need something from me doesn't demonstrate genuine remorse or growth. It shows desperation." Roman's expression hardened. "So that's it? You're going to turn your back on family when we need help after all the advantages you've had?" I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of his statement. "Advantages? Roman, I built everything I have without any help from our family. In fact, I succeeded despite the constant message that I wasn't good enough. And as for turning my back on family, you did that to me 10 years ago with your fist." I saw shame flash across his face, quickly replaced by anger. "You always were selfish," he muttered. "Setting boundaries is not selfish. It's necessary for healthy relationships, something I had to learn the hard way." I unlocked my phone and pulled up a document I had prepared while in the house. "I won't leave you with nothing. Here's the contact information for 3 extended stay hotels in the area that offer weekly rates. I've paid for 2 weeks at any of these places, which should give you time to figure out your next steps." I sent the information to Roman's phone, which buzzed in his pocket. I've also included the contact information for the local Workforce Development Center. They offer job placement services and resume assistance, and there's information about rental assistance programs in the county. Lucy looked up, confusion evident in her tear-stained face. "Why would you help us at all after everything we did?" "Because I choose to be better than the treatment I received," I said simply. "I won't bring you into my home and risk exposing my family to the same toxic dynamics I grew up with, but I can offer practical assistance that helps you move forward on your own path." Roman seemed torn between gratitude and lingering resentment. "Your daughter," he said after a moment, "would you at least let us meet her? She's our niece after all." I shook my head. "Not now. Maybe someday,
if you demonstrate real change over time. But that relationship would need to be built on genuine connection, not obligation or guilt. How are we supposed to prove we've changed if you won't give us a chance? Roman demanded. By respecting the boundaries I'm setting right now, by understanding that trust, once broken, takes more than a single conversation to rebuild, by building your lives back up independently and approaching me as equals, not as people who need to be rescued. I could see they were disappointed, perhaps even angry, but there was a glimmer of understanding in their eyes. They knew deep down that they had no right to expect more from me. The offer of the hotel and resources stand. The rest is up to you. Lucy nodded slowly. Thank you for that much. It's more than we deserve. Everyone deserves basic compassion, but not everyone deserves unfettered access to our lives. That has to be earned through consistent respect and care. Roman remained silent, his pride clearly wounded. Finally, he said, "We'll take the hotel offer. And I'm sorry, Abigail, for everything. Not just because we need help now, but because I see now how wrong I was. It took losing everything to understand what really matters." "I hope you mean that," I said, "for your sake more than mine. I forgave you years ago, not because you deserved it, but because I deserved peace." With that, I closed the gate, locked it, and walked back to my home, where Brian and Lily waited on the terrace. Brian put his arm around me as we watched Roman and Lucy get into their car and drive away. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. "Yes," I said, and meant it. For the first time in my life, I feel completely at peace with my family situation. Not because it's fixed, but because I know my worth doesn't depend on their validation. That evening, after Lily was in bed, I called Lawrence to tell him what had happened. He listened thoughtfully as I recounted the encounter. "You did the right thing," he said when I had finished. "True healing doesn't mean letting people who hurt you back into your life unconditionally. It means making choices from a place of strength rather than fear or obligation." "I keep thinking about what I would want Lily to do if she were ever in my position," I told him. "And I would want her to protect her peace, to understand that love should never require her to sacrifice her well-being or dignity." As the sun set over the Pacific, I sat alone on the beach, below our house, watching the waves crash against the shore. The ocean had been my constant companion these past years, its vastness reminding me that my problems were just one small part of a much larger world. Its constancy had taught me that, like the tides, life moves in cycles of challenge and peace. The greatest lesson I had learned through everything was this: family is not defined by blood, but by actions. It's built on mutual respect, consistent support, and unconditional acceptance. The people who truly deserve a place in our lives are those who value us for exactly who we are, not for what we can do for them or how we make them look to others. Setting boundaries is not about punishing those who hurt us. It's about creating space for relationships that nurture rather than deplete us. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do for ourselves and others is to say no to dynamics that no longer serve us. My journey from the family disappointment to a woman standing firmly in her own power had not been easy. There had been moments of doubt, of loneliness, of wondering if I was making the right choices. But sitting there on the beach, with the home I had built behind me and the family I had chosen above me on the terrace, I knew with absolute certainty that I had created exactly the life I was meant to live. As I watched the last light fade from the sky, I felt gratitude wash over me. Gratitude for the challenges that had forced me to find my strength. Gratitude for the people who saw my worth when my family could not. And yes, even gratitude for Roman and Lucy, whose rejection had ultimately set me free to become the person I was always meant to be. Have you ever had to set a difficult boundary with family members who hurt you? How did you find the strength to stand your ground when they needed something from you? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more authentic life experiences. Remember, your worth is not determined by those who failed to see it, but by your courage to honor yourself despite their blindness. Thank you for watching, and I wish you the strength to create the boundaries you deserve in your own life.